I tell a lot of people the important thing about networking is not for the today, it's for tomorrow. So it's not meeting the person once and they're gonna do something to you. It's like a friendship. You gotta nurture it.
Immigrating is one of the most insane things anyone can do.
We already are risk takers, right? For you to leave your comfort and move to a completely new country, it already takes a lot of risk. It's not easy to keep doing networking when you're settling. So
Yeah.
there was a time I was a contractor making over 200 grand a year. I didn't need to go networking for my future, I thought, right? But I kept going. And a lot of people do that mistake. They start networking, and when they land a job, they stop networking.
Hmm.
And the day they actually need the network,
It's not
they
there.
don't have it
Yeah.
because it's gone.
As an immigrant, like if you want to run a business, especially, I feel like you can't. Welcome back to Unfiltered with Proch. Today we're talking with Mario Meyer, who's a fractional CFO and founder and CEO of Reyem Tech. I like that name.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, I wanna get going right now, and I think my first question to you, this is where we kick it off. What do you think it takes to be an immigrant entrepreneur? Just curious, looking at your experience. Like, I want to start from the back this time around. What do you think it takes to be one?
I think it's a double leap of faith, you know? You already took the first leap of faith, moving away from your home country and coming somewhere new, new culture, new people. You pretty much don't know anybody in this place. But then, as it's not enough, you gotta do more. You decide to open a business as well. So you don't know anybody, you don't know the culture, you know absolutely nothing about this place, and then you decide to open a business where you don't know how people make business, right? So I think it's a crazy journey. I think it's completely insane,
I agree.
but we still do it. I
Yeah.
think, and I think one of the reasons is because we already are risk takers, right? For you to leave your comfort and your home and your family and your friends and move to a completely new country, it already takes a lot of risk.
Yeah.
And since I'm already taking all this risk, why not take a little bit more and maybe be better off in the future, right? So I think it takes a lot of risk taking and being comfortable with who you are and your capabilities and knowing that not only can you be in a new country, but you can also risk, opening a business out of nothing on a place you don't know. You know nobody, you have no connections, but you still do it.
You know, I really like that because what I say, so I also run a podcast where I talk to just immigrants, not this is just focused on immigrant entrepreneurs. And I say to people that immigrating is one of the most insane things anyone can do. Uh,
Definitely, definitely.
yeah, and you're right. It's like double insanity. It's like, oh, you know what? The first insanity, I moved with two suitcases. Well, I am really insane. I might as well keep extending it. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start a business.
Exactly. So why not? You already did the hardest stuff. Why? This is probably easier than immigrating, but it compounds, right? At the end, it
Yeah.
compounds.
I want to go back to now you moving to Canada because in the pre-show you mentioned to me you moved to Canada and you launched a business right away. I mean, yeah, yeah, that is wild because the ideal sense of what people would say to you is that when you move, you spend like the first 1 year, 2 years kind of settling in and stuff before you decide to start a business. Like, and so for you, like the day you boarded the plane and say I was going to Canada, were you always saying in your head, okay, once I get there, I'm going to run a business, or like how what were you thinking?
Actually, the company was already opened. So
Oh,
I opened the company while I was still back home in Brazil. Uh, I'm a very planning person, so I plan my future a lot. I always tell people I have the vision on my head, always what I want, where I want to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So I always have that vision. And when I was planning my coming here, it took me almost like 3 to 5 years planning it. And I thought about myself. I was leaving a very, very, very comfortable job back home in Brazil. It was almost like it wasn't a public servant, but almost like a public servant job. Uh, Stability, would never get fired. I was getting more than I could spend, all of that. But I wanted to leave the place. I wanted to go away. There were personal issues as well for going away. We can get into that later if you want. But when I was planning, I was thinking, I can just look for a new job. But since I'm doing this, why not try something new? I think I'm at that stage in my life where I'm comfortable enough with my capabilities so I can actually do something that I want to do on my own without relying on anybody else, right? And at the time, I knew this guy back home in Brazil. He is like a high school friend. He's a friend of a friend from the high school years. We went out a lot. We went to clubs, partying, and we did all the crazy teenage shit together way back when. And now he has a very, very successful startup back home in Brazil. This startup does data analytics on top of Wi-Fi access data. So,
Oh,
meaning
interesting.
you when you provide your email for logging into a public Wi-Fi, instead of just having the email, this company enriches all the data and gives the businesses actually providing you the Wi-Fi access a lot of information about the people who are in their physical space, right? And since I knew this guy, one day, like 6 months before I came, I said, "Hey, you know, have you thought about Canada?" He said, "No, but entertain me." So we booked a meeting like 2 weeks from there. I made a whole pitch presentation to him, comparing Brazilian market to Canadian market at every single level you can imagine. And I took it there and I said, "You know what? You're my bud. I trust you. So if you want to do it, that's you, man. You got my deal. You can be the sole representative in Canada. All businesses in Canada are gonna be yours, and let's do it." And so I arrived in Canada, I think January 12th. The company was open January 6th. So I was talking to the lawyers and doing everything. So I landed here. The company was open, so I landed here. I went to the bank to open the corporate account immediately. That's it. That's it. And started this business, and then all the complications with COVID came just
Oh
2 months
gosh.
later.
Oh gosh. Wait. Now, with COVID and all that, it's like because the way you describe the business, it's physical. Like so people have to put their emails. So COVID meant no one was putting their emails. There was no customer to sell to.
Yeah, so the business is physical. So, for instance, kinds of businesses that use this service are restaurants, uh, shopping centers, malls, airports, stadiums, retail stores. Those are kind of businesses that actually benefit from this kind of service because they get a lot of information from people who are in their venue, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes you go to a retail store, you go in, pick up a shirt, pay for it, and go away, but they don't know who you are. But if you
Yeah.
use their Wi-Fi, we can give you all that information about you,
Oh, that's
right?
interesting.
And it's actually when you look at the back end, it's kind of scary because the amount of information I have on you, it's amazing. I remember several years back before I even had the Canada idea for this business, I knew the guy, I knew the CEO and founder, and I was in a hotel in a very, very remote place in Brazil, uh, in the middle of the Amazon jungle. And when I logged into the hotel Wi-Fi, I saw his company name there, and then I sent him a message. "Hey, buddy, I'm at a hotel. It's using your system." 2 minutes later, he said, "Oh, you're in room 292." Yeah. So it's they got a lot of information on you, and they deliver all that information to the businesses. And it's a really good business model. They started with that, and they transitioned more to data analytics company more than just Wi-Fi. So they do a lot of data analytics overall with data enrichment with several platforms. But then I got here, started, let's build a pipeline. Let's start calling people, right? And I start calling people 2 months in doing it. COVID comes. Hits everybody. And everybody says it's 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I said, okay, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And I keep calling people, but people are scary. People are
Yeah.
worried of making changes and this and that. But throughout COVID for an entire year, I kept calling people. I didn't care. I just kept calling people. We almost landed a very, very big project with one of the Toronto BIAs, Business improvement areas, right? They wanted to do a on-street Wi-Fi for the entire BIA. So I partnered with some other companies to do the infrastructure, not just the software that I was providing. We had several meetings. We were very close to actually closing that deal in the middle of the pandemic. But then again, I think we closed down again, and they just didn't have the funds of the BIA anymore to do it. So we stopped for a while. And that was my first year here. My entire first year in Canada was pretty much trying to sell something, just draining my personal bank account to keep up afloat, and trying to make this business run. But COVID took 2 years in Canada, so
Yeah.
it wasn't time enough.
So like I how did you stay motivated through all that? Like, cause I mean, I would, if you said to me, Dossier, I resigned. I stopped chasing it, went to work for a bit. But no, you stayed in there.
I stayed in there, I'm a glass half full guy, you know. And I said, this is gonna end sometime. I kept looking for other options, of course, because my bank account was draining. Um, but I just kept trying. I thought, this might happen. Even after I found something else, I didn't close my partnership with them. My whole partnership with them was during about 2 years. And the CEO several times told me, "Hey Mario, I really, really appreciate your strength and your perseverance. You've been doing this for years." And I wasn't just trying to build a business in Canada, but I was helping them do their internationalization because they're very big in Brazil, they're very small in the rest of the world, right?
Yeah.
So I was telling them, if you want to be international, you gotta do this. If you want to do international, you gotta do that. Some little details in the messaging of the company and how the company positions itself across the globe and this and that. So since I was very, very close to the CEO, I had that possibility of actually helping that internationalization process. And I actually became a very good friend with the Mexican guy that is actually running the internationalization project right now in this company, and they are actually asking me to come back as a representative to them. So I'm probably gonna have a meeting with them over the next few weeks or something to talk about it. But they're really revamping their internationalization. They were doing this during COVID, so it didn't go well. The founder
Yeah.
moved from Brazil to Atlanta, Georgia.
Ah,
Didn't work. He went back to Brazil, but now they're restarting that process. They're pretty much the biggest player in Brazilian market on this. They have all the airports. They have uh, 50 to 60% of the hotels in the country. They
oh.
have the stadiums. They have the subways. They have everything in the country in that area, right? So they want to go international because that's the way they can actually grow their revenue in
Yeah.
a completely different level.
So now, like after COVID, what happened? Like, did you still stay with them? Did you launch something
Yeah,
else?
so during COVID, my bank account was draining and I was trying to do this, but I was looking for other options and jobs and contractor jobs and this and that. At the end of 2020, I landed a contractor role doing fractional CTO work. And fractional CTO work is just like a CTO would be to any startup, but a fraction of the time, a fraction of the cost. So most startups that can't afford somebody full time, it would go in by contract, 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week. And I landed at that position in December 2020. I started my first engagement early January in 2021. And I stayed at that company for 3 years, and I went from contractor to associate partner in that company, right? So sometimes I had like six clients, six continuous clients, doing like 5 to 10 hours each. I was working like crazy, to be honest, making a shitload of money. I was making a lot of money because it's a very well-paying job. It's very high level job. And I went all the way to associate partner until December 2023, where the interest rates the country was slowing down again and this and that, and they said, "Hey Mario, sorry, but we can't afford you anymore, you know? We can't do it anymore. We like you, but there's no way we can do it. And I was like 2 weeks from taking a vacation and going back home. I during that phase, I had my daughter in the middle of 2023. I had my daughter, and we're going back to Brazil in December for the holidays and for her baptism. So, like 2 weeks from going to Brazil, this happens. I said, "Well, I'm gonna take a vacation. I'm just
Hmm.
gonna chill, right?" So I chilled for that period, and while we were back home in Brazil with the family and all of this, and that was a very important moment for me. My wife came to me and said, "You know what? You were a partner in that company. You were doing sales, you were doing pipeline, you weren't just doing fractional CTO work. Why don't you do it for yourself again?" Then that spark, that entrepreneur spark inside of me said, "You know what?
Let's do this.
Let's do this." So I spent a month in Brazil with my family during the day and doing all the infrastructure for the company during the night. So my wife and my daughter would go to sleep, my parents would go to sleep, I would go to the computer, start building websites, start building pipelines, CRM, this and that. So I spent a month back home in Brazil building a business at night, at least building the infrastructure for a business at night, right? So when we got back here again, I landed in Canada and the new business was there. Second time I landed in Canada and the business
Yeah.
is ready.
Gosh.
I
You
think
are
it's my karma,
something.
you know. I like to land in Canada with the business ready to go.
But how's it been now the second time? Just curious, looking at all the things that you've experienced so far, like, because I feel like the first time you came, you landed with the business. This COVID came faster, like you didn't really get going. Yeah, you're calling people and stuff, but it's a bit different from once you start to take people's money for a service. Then you went to work, and then you now launched your business. Struggle, easy to do, hard, because you're quite
It
experienced.
was, to be honest, it was a little bit easier.
Hmm.
And the reason it was a little bit easier is because I had all my network built during those
Oh,
3 years, right? Those almost 4 years. So throughout those all those years, no matter what I was doing, if I was just doing contractor work or working for just one company, I was doing an average of 3 or 4 networking events a week. Okay, that's until my daughter was born. After my daughter was born, I had to reduce it a little bit because it gets trickier. But up to the point where my daughter was born, I was doing 3 or 4 events a week, and all throughout GTA, right? And it got to a point where no matter what event I go, anywhere in the city, in the tech space, I know at least 5 or 6 people.
that's amazing.
You know, I sometimes I just try out. Let me pick up a new event, completely new. Never been to this one. I book it, RSVP. I go there. I know 5, 6 people, right? Because and and I tell a lot of people the important thing about networking is not for the today, it's for tomorrow, right? So it's not meeting the person once and they're gonna do something to you. It's like a friendship. You gotta nurture it. So keep meeting those people 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And then they start realizing who you are. You start becoming top of mind for them. And then they will actually start referring you to. So opening the business second time was easier because of that. I had built all that network. And it's not easy to keep doing networking when you're settling. So there was
Yeah.
a time I was a contractor making over 200 grand a year. I didn't need to go networking for my future, I thought, right? But I kept going. And a lot of people do that mistake. They start networking, and when they land a job, they stop networking.
Hmm.
And the day they actually need the network,
It's
they
not
don't
there.
have it because it's
Yeah.
gone, right? So I always tell people, don't doesn't matter if you already got a job. Keep freaking networking because it's for tomorrow. It's not for today, right? So I built all these networks, and within 90 days, I landed my first contract. Within 90 days, I actually landed my two first contracts, one bigger, one smaller, but I landed my two first contracts within those 90 days. Actually, I think it was even closer to 60 days. And it's not a small ticket, it's a big ticket item. So I'm I'm talking about 5, 10K a month contracts. Okay, so they're big contracts, not like you're selling a t-shirt
Yeah.
to everybody, right? So I think it was easier, but in part due to all my preparation over those years. And
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people, and that's especially important to immigrants. You come to Canada, you're 30, 40 years old, right? You had 30 to 40 years to build a network in your country. And you come here, you know nobody,
Yeah.
right? So I tell everybody when you're an immigrant, networking has to become your second profession. Networking is a business. So I always tell people I do networking in restaurants because we need it. I need to rebuild that 40 years of networking I had in Brazil in a few years to be successful here,
Yeah.
right? And that takes completely desperate measures. Completely desperate measures. For instance, last year I live in rural area of GTA, a little bit far north, and I joined the local chamber of commerce. I knew nobody, and they were having elections for board of directors. I signed up
Mario.
and I ran for it. And the big thing is you had a 3 minute speech. So I gave my 3 minute speech. I didn't get in by 2 votes.
Damn.
And then the mayor came to me and said, "Hey, man, you should have gotten it." I said, "Hey, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, but my strategy wasn't getting in. My strategy here was power networking. Nobody knew me before my speech. Now everybody knows the crazy guy that tries to get into the board without knowing anybody, So I went from knowing nobody in the local chamber to knowing everybody in the local chamber in 3 minutes. And that's the kind of crazy stuff you gotta do sometimes to build your network. On several events, they had open mics, and I would just go to the open mic and tell something and say something so people would see me and recognize me. And, by nature, I'm an introvert. I was the off kid on the back of the room in high school, and I was the one being bullied at. And by nature, I'm an introvert, but during university, I noticed that I had to artificially become an extrovert. Otherwise, I wouldn't be successful, right? So for me, doing those things, it's hard. I get the butterflies on the stomach. It's sometimes when I go to networking and I'm tired, I simply say, "Hey, today, I don't want to start conversations. If somebody starts, I'll take it, but I don't want to start conversations today." So for me, it's not like it's a natural thing. It's out of my comfort zone. It gets easier. I've been doing it for so many years that it gets easier to do it, but it's still out of my comfort zone. But again, the future of my family depends on this. So networking becomes a second business. So several days a week. For instance, yesterday I worked from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and I went to a networking event in the middle of a blizzard. There were 5 people there, but at least I tried,
Yeah.
right? So I think that was the biggest difference opening the second business. It's all that effort that I put in throughout the years that I was here that are starting to pay off. For instance, I got a lead this Sunday at 11 p.m. I was watching TV. My wife and daughter were asleep, and I was watching TV in the living room, and I got somebody on LinkedIn, "Hey Mario, somebody refer me to you," and I started talking to that person, and I asked, "Who did you refer me?" And said, "Oh, it's this person. She met you at this event." It's an event that happened 2 years ago. This event happened 2 years ago when I was a partner at the other company. Right? So I always tell people networking, it's a long play.
Yeah.
It's a long game, but it pays off, right? And that's why I think it was easier. And there are other smaller factors like I know the culture, I already know how people do business. I already know how people communicate. Uh, It is easier. The second time around, it's always easier. You always learn from your first mistakes. And there wasn't any COVID, and my business right now doesn't change a thing if there's COVID.
That is just so powerful in many ways because yeah, as an immigrant, like especially if you want to run a business. Like I feel like it's yes, if you want to get a job, it's the same thing. But if you want to run a business, especially, I feel like you cannot not go to networking events. You have no choice. Like if you sit in your house and expect that stuff will happen to you, especially in a country like Canada, I mean, the cultural nuances that Canada operates within, where there's a lot of trust, there's a lot of referrals, there's a lot of communities that are within communities that are within communities. And if you just sit down and just say, oh, okay, I'm going to do this in my home, you could probably still make it, but you're going to have to work really, really much harder than you would have if you just took some time to kind of
Yeah,
build.
definitely. It's that's one of the things that I learned from the Canadian culture. Again, I did my undergrad here, but I wasn't in a business setting at the time. I was in an academic setting. So the business setting here is all about trust. You know, it's all about looking in the eye. It's all about shaking hands. Even though we can do our services completely remote, I still make sure that at least the kickoff meeting, I actually go to the client. You know, I actually meet them, sit on their table, shake hands, I eye to eye, and networking is crucial for that because my sales cycle for a cold outreach can be 6 months.
Hmm.
My sales cycle for referral, it's been down to the fastest one, 48 hours.
Damn.
The biggest contract they have in the company, it was a 48-hour sales cycle. And simply because it was a referral from somebody that I know here in the community, there is a close-knit CTO community in Toronto. This guy was already the CTO for that company and he was leaving and he referred me. It was a 48-hour cycle. In 48 hours, I had a contract signed and a deposit in the bank.
It's something you raised, which I find interesting. The point about the culture, just understanding the culture aside from networking. And do you have any thoughts on how people can understand that, as an entrepreneur? I mean, if you didn't go to school here, because you're right, you move here at 30, your 30s, you literally have 2, 3 years to build some form of social capital that you've lost because when you come here, you start from ground zero. So any thoughts on how people could approach that?
Yeah, I think it's if you know somebody, I knew a few people here. You know, I knew some people from my college days that gave me some advice. Um, Listen to the people you know, and if you don't know anybody, when you start going to those events, you're gonna start knowing people and ask them questions. You know, people who have been here longer than you, they'll gladly help you.
Yeah.
People come to me. A lot of Brazilians arrive in Canada come to me and say, how do I open a business? How do I open a business bank account? How do I send a proposal email in Canada? What is the lingo for that? You know, just ask people. It's gonna take you way longer to learn by yourself by trial and error than just asking people. You know, and I at the beginning I was also very lucky. I already knew some people from my college days that are. I did my college in Alberta, but those people are here in Ontario right now, so uh, really good contacts. But at the time, I met somebody in one of those networking events, and at the time it was digital because it was middle of COVID, so it was online networking events. And this person, she was a business coach, okay? And I I liked her. We had a good conversation. She tried to sell me her services. I was very honest with her. I said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I don't have a dime. My bank account is draining from my savings from back home. I can't afford this, but I really need the help." And she said, "Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna help you for 3 months. I'm gonna coach you weekly for 3 months for free. And later, if you want, you come back to me." Okay, but you gotta realize since I'm doing this pro bono, if a client comes, I'll have to cancel or reschedule. I said, "Of course, I totally understand that, right?" And that lady, she was very, very helpful from personal stuff to business stuff. So we had some problems with my wife was at college at the time doing her MBA, and all the craziness with COVID, online classes, this and that, and it was a mess at college, and she even helped me. How do I write an email to the president of the college about my concerns? You know, what kind of lingo do I use? What kind of statements do I use? How do I position myself in all of this? So it was really helpful. I think there's a lot of kindness that people don't know there is out there. I myself, I try to help everybody I can. I've mentored a ton of people coming to Canada. There was a mentorship program for Brazilians coming to Canada. I had like 5 or 6 mentees on that program. Each one of them got a job within the mentorship program, which was 3 months. So I think it's all paid for, right? So people help you, you help people, and you keep going. But if you look around and start talking to those people you know or the people who are meeting at your networking events, at some point somebody will help you just for kindness, you know, because they want to help somebody and or they like you and they see you're in a tough spot. So just ask, you know, don't be afraid. We have a saying in Brazil, you know, it's the no you already have. If you don't ask, you're never gonna get a yes.
Ha ha ha! I like that.
So the no is given. The no
Yeah,
is given, right? If you don't ask, you can never get a yes. So just, you know, ask people, how should I do this? You know, community is like Porch itself. You know, a lot of people go there and how do I do this? How do I do that? I met Porch through one of its members, but I helped him a ton of times in Porch, you know. So it was good that he told me to go to Porch because I helped him a ton of times. I actually just referred him my financial planner like last week, you know. So just ask people. People, especially immigrants that have been here longer, they have been through your journey. You know, I would gladly help somebody that is going through something I went in the past. You know,
yeah,
if we can help people don't do the mistakes we made, it's such a good thing, and it feels so good with
yeah,
that, right? So
yeah. And you're right. You know, I always say something to immigrants that the worst thing you can do to yourself is to feel like a victim. So when you feel like a victim, then what you start to do is you're like, I'm not going to ask because if I ask, they will not tell me, or I will be profiled, or I will. No, you don't do that to yourself at all. Like you can't stop people from being bad, but that also means that there are also people who are good. And like you said, if you step out of your comfort zone and all of your blame zone and say, you know what, I'm just going to try and ask questions. More often than not, you will meet people who will be kind to you, who will become friends for life, who will become partners, business partners, collaborators. But it all starts with you in your head.
exactly,
Stop feeling like a victim that, oh, I am.
it's like
Yeah,
any other kind of relationship, right? If you never ask the girl out, you're never
she's
gonna
never
be
gonna
able,
get married. Yeah.
right? If you never ask somebody you met to go have lunch or go golfing or go skiing, you're never gonna become friends,
Yeah.
right? It's the same thing, and I think people in the business world think, you know, I gotta do it all by myself. No, you don't. You know, just ask for help. People are gonna help you, and a lot of people have helped me, and I try to help a lot of people as well.
Okay, so we're rounding up now. I have one more question for you. Then we go to what I call the this or that. Like, what book, podcast are you reading to, listening to now, and which would you recommend like fellow immigrant entrepreneurs to listen to or to read?
I don't think there's anyone I'm reading right now because I'm so damn busy at this moment. But there are some really good books I read in the past. One of them was Like a Virgin from Richard Branson. It's not a like a full business book, but it's short stories about business, right? And he's showing on his businesses, you know, short stories that make Virgin Group be what it is, you know, attention to client, you know, attention to quality and this and that. So he's showing real business cases, real interactions that happened in the
Mm-hmm.
past, and that gives you a lot of insight on how to deal with your business, right? I think that's a really good book. There are tons of really good books for other areas like marketing, sales, people management. But one that, since I'm in technology, I'm gonna refer some of my area books. There is the Lean Methodology by Eric Ries, and it's something. that is important to every startup, and I think every business owner should read about it. Even if you're not doing a tech startup, a lot of its concepts can be applied to any kind of business. Being lean, being doing just what it needs to be done, right? So I think a lot of, and I was discussing this with somebody, I think from Porsche a few weeks ago. Some people like to overthink the littlest things, Should I have a bank account on this bank or that bank? Should I have a credit card, personal or corporate? Said you don't even have clients. It doesn't matter, right? Should I have this or that CRM? Should I have this or that system? You don't have clients yet. It doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah.
So I always tell people you should be very lean with your business. You should do things when they actually become a problem. We we as entrepreneurs we like to take care of everything, but sometimes we overthink the smallest stuff that doesn't have the biggest impact on where you are right now, right?
Mm,
So I think reading this lean methodology, it's something I read a few times. I apply it every day with the startups I work with, but it's something that it's very important for you to understand what actually makes a difference, what actually generates revenue for your business,
mhm,
and what actually where do you have to spend? Do I have to spend on this or that? What is gonna bring me the money now, right? And what is gonna make this business work now,
mhm.
right? So that's one I would recommend for people to read.
Well, that's a good book. I was looking to the side because I think I have it. It's actually I have it on my bookshelf. Like, yeah, I have that book. I've read a bit of it and I dropped it. I'll go back to it again. Let's do this or that right now. So this or that is just basically you just answer one question. So I'll start off. Work from home or work from an office?
Can I be in the middle ground?
No. I would allow you to be the middle. Choose one. Choose one.
I'll choose one, but I'll give my reasoning. Okay.
Okay. All right.
I would rather work from home because there is no traffic, there is no commuting, but it is important to have the one-on-one. So I told you I like to go to clients for the first meeting, or when I have teams, I like to meet them at least with a cadence so we have that personal touch. Even though working from home is more efficient to me, I still think that human connection is super important.
Okay. Bootstrapping or seeking investors?
Bootstrapping until you need investors.
Oh, that's an interesting way to think of it. Networking events or online forums?
Networking events, hand down.
Like I knew the answer already if I asked that question. Ebooks or paper books?
Ebooks.
Hmm. I'm a paper book person. I mean, I still have some
My
ebooks.
wife's a paper book person. I'm
Yeah.
a book person.
Podcasts or reading?
Both.
You had to do that. Debt financing or equity financing?
Depends on your stage.
Hmm. Why do you say
Uh,
so?
i- if it's too early, that financing is better. You don't want to give up equity too soon because you're going to have to give up too much equity to get any valuable amount of money. So I would say earliest stages, that financing, uh, maybe family and friends round or something. Equity financing is for when you already have something that is already running and you can actually predict the valuation. Otherwise, you're gonna give up way too much of your company way too soon.
Hmm. Building from scratch or acquiring an existing business?
For startups, building from scratch. For big companies, acquiring.
Mario, pick one.
For startups, building from scratch.
Okay. And the last one is so there's this big thing these days about lifestyle businesses. So basically, do you building a sustainable lifestyle business or chasing rapid scale?
Growth, growth all the way. Lifestyle comes later. We're gonna have enough time to do it later. Especially after
Does it come
after
later?
you have a kid. It's growth. I need to secure the future of my kid.
Yeah.
Lifestyle I can do later. Of course, I'm not just digging my head into sand and forgetting about my family. There is some balance, but I need to build a future for my family before I think about being comfortable lifestyle. I'm Gen X.
Thanks a bunch. This was really good, honestly. Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Mario.
Thank you very much.